This is my review of the RevX inflatable cold plunge with the 1.5 horsepower chiller and the Ozone Sanitation cabinet. Ooh. The setup. The setup was overall very easy and straightforward. RevX basically lays everything out for you with step-by-step video instructions. I'd say by the time it's all said and done, you probably need like 45 minutes to an hour or so to get everything fully set up. But the good news is that because the chiller is so powerful, it'll only take like 20 minutes from when you turn that chiller on before you are ready to cold plunge into that cold water. But we will get to more of that later. Compared to other systems, this one does take a bit more time to set up, but that's because this is a modular system. And the benefit of a modular system is that everything is exposed. So if there are any issues down the line or during your setup, you will have access to all of the parts, and they are just so easy to swap out and troubleshoot any issues. One thing to note about the setup is that all of the tubing used for this is vinyl PVC, which means that you won't be twisting any threads in to make your connections. You basically just have to forcefully push it in. I did struggle with this a little bit as the connections are super tight with the plastic, but I did end up using some hot water to loosen up some of that plastic tubing, and everything worked out very, very well. Ultimately, not that big of a deal. You then fasten all of the connections with a hand crank. The only negative of vinyl tubing like this is that it is kind of a pain to remove them once they're in. So if you do want to drain your tub or troubleshoot, it is kind of a pain to pull them apart, unlike other systems where you just have to unscrew something. However, the positives of these types of vinyl tubing is that you can actually cut them yourself. So if you wanted to make your setup even more tight and compact, you can actually cut the tubing yourself for a tighter and more efficient system. So like, for example, if you wanted to move that chiller closer to the sanitation box, you can just cut the tubing yourself, super easy. And I will say that the tubing being as tight as it is, there were literally no leaks when I first turned on the system, which I actually think is the first time I've ever completed a cold plunge build and didn't have just a minor leak somewhere. Like every time I ever build something, I turn it on, there's always just a tiny little leak. But with this system, absolutely no leaks. Everything worked perfectly from the first time I put it on. So a little more work up front to get everything connected, but once you get it all connected, it is airtight. Obviously, as you can see, all the tubing also does have insulation pre-installed on it, and that's going to make sure that you're not going to have any condensation, and it's also obviously going to make the whole thing run more efficiently, and you are not going to lose as much heat and energy as the water is moving through the system because it is of course insulated. Next step is to fill up the tub. RevX has provided us with a filter hose, which is something that I always recommend doing, which is filling your tub with the cleanest possible water. So this filter will ensure that. Let's fill it up. As for the tub itself, it of course is an inflatable. It's also easy to set up just like any other inflatable on the market. You basically just pump it up with the supplied pump. You bring it to 8 PSI and you're good to go. They also give you a mat to put it on, which I thought was a really great touch, which just provides further protection from any uneven surfaces or sharp parts of surfaces to just further protect the tub. So the mat was a really nice touch. If you watch any of my videos, you will know that I am not the biggest fan of inflatables and really plastic in general. However, I do think that inflatables have their place, and for a system like this, the fact that they use an inflatable just makes it cheaper to ship, it makes it cheaper to purchase in general. So considering the fact that this cold plunge is like $2,500, you are really getting a phenomenal deal, and one of the trade-offs of that is in fact an inflatable tub. One thing I do like about the tub though is that it's white, which, as we learned from science class growing up, white is going to reflect the sun. So if this thing is out in the middle of the day, the white color will allow it to be cooler as it will reflect the sun, as opposed to a black tub, which will actually retain the heat from the sun, therefore making a black tub harder to insulate and less efficient for your overall system. The blue liner on the inside of the tub is nice. I always enjoy lighter colored liners, so you are able to closely monitor the murkiness and quality of the water throughout your day-to-day use. The only real issue I have with the tub itself is that it only has an input and an output hole, which makes it a little bit difficult to drain. Basically, you'd have to undo those hoses, which I previously mentioned. Those hoses are kind of tough to get on, so in order to drain it, you are going to have to pull them off and then put them back on. Therefore, if you do plan on purchasing this system, I highly recommend buying a separate pump to drain it. Fortunately, RevX does sell this on their website for around $150. This pump comes with a bunch of fittings, so basically you just connect your garden hose or any other hose you have lying around, you plug it into a GFCI outlet, and it will pump the water out of your tub without you having to undo any of your plumbing. And the pump itself is very well made. It has a 3/4 horsepower flow rate, so you can see this thing is pumping water pretty good. So basically with this pump, it took me about 6 minutes to pump all of the water out of my tub, which I found to be very impressive. On that same note, the tub also doesn't come with a hair catcher, so you will want to make sure that no debris gets caught up in any of the output holes going into your chiller. So, you want to make sure that there's no hair or anything floating around, because that hair could go into your system and cause issues. So I would have loved to see a system like this come with some sort of a hair catcher, but you can in fact buy one on their website, which is nice. As far as the chiller, I have nothing but great things to say. RevX is offering 3 different options for chiller: a 1 horsepower, a 1.5 horsepower, and a 2 horsepower chiller. The only real difference between each of these chillers is how fast they will be able to cool down your water to temperature. So the one that I currently have on my system is the 1.5 horsepower chiller, and I will say it was able to cool my water from like 60 degrees to 41 degrees in like 20 minutes, which is pretty incredible. Keep in mind though, the air temperature is like 55 degrees out right now. But nonetheless, that is still very impressive, and the chiller is definitely a beast. Just chills water incredibly fast, incredibly efficiently. As far as just using it, it's very simple and straightforward to use. Just a couple buttons to set the temperature up, down, and lock it in. It's very simple and straightforward to use. One thing that I absolutely really love about this chiller is that it has a mechanism put in place where it works by using a range of plus or minus 5 degrees. Meaning, if you set the chiller to 41 degrees, which is what I currently have it at, it will cool your water to 41 degrees, and then it will remain idle for plus or minus 5 degrees. So for example, if it's warm out, it will allow the natural air temperature to warm the chiller back up to 46 degrees before it'll turn on again at 47 degrees, in which case it will then bring the water back down to 41 degrees and then shut off and continuing on. So to me, this is a phenomenal feature in which it will both extend the life of the chiller and cut back on your electricity costs. And what's even better than that is that this also works the other way, in that if the ambient air temperature is cold, it will allow the water to get down to 36 degrees before it kicks on again, and then it will warm itself back up to your set temperature of 41 degrees. Now, you should be asking, how is that possible? And the answer is that this chiller actually does have a heating element, which means that it can heat the water. And what that really means is that as long as the system is on, it can be left outside in very cold climates and it will not freeze due to the fact that it has a heating element. So, phenomenal feature. I guess technically it could also be used as a hot tub like so many are, but I personally don't recommend that, and I'm pretty sure RevX also does not recommend using this as a hot tub, but I think it technically could be. One thing that I will say is that when the chiller is active, it does require a lot of energy, so make sure that the power line that you're putting it on also doesn't have large appliances on it. I had a few issues with my chiller tripping my power because the power line that it was initially on also has my whole house heater on it. So once again, there was just too much power coming in. But once I plugged the chiller into a different electrical outlet and it was on a new line, everything has been working totally fine. So just one thing to be aware of. We are interrupting this review video to bring you a first look at our patent pending cold plunge game. So we got the chiller going. You know, water's only at 55 degrees right now, so not too difficult, but whatever, we will persist. All right, let's start the game.
Chill. And the first letter of the second word is O. Next.
Chill out.
Good. C.
Out. Out carry. Letter.
O.
Out cold.
Yep. P.
Cold plunge.
Great. P.
Plunge. Pool.
Great. T.
Pool. Very shivering right here. Pool. T. Pool. Letter.
A.
Pool. Letter.
B.
Pool tablet. Pool table. Pool table. Pool table. Ah, pool table. As for the system itself, you can think of it in 3 parts. We've already touched on the bath itself, the chiller, and the third part is my absolute favorite part of this system, which is actually why I was so excited to review this product, and that is the sanitation cabinet. The sanitation cabinet essentially bridges the gap between the tub and the chiller. In the way that the sanitation cabinet works is that the water comes from the ice bath through the input hole, it hits the pump, which sends the water to the chiller. The chiller then cools the water and sends it back through the sanitation portion, where it passes through a 20 micron filter and either an ozone sanitation or a UV sanitation, whichever you decide to purchase. As far as the cabinet itself, it really is absolutely amazing. It's a dream come true. It's basically made out of hard metal with doors, making it great if you want to bring it outside and leave it in the elements. There are holes on the bottom in case of any leaks or condensation. And yeah, everything is just done for you as far as all the holes for electricity and input holes for the water. I really cannot speak highly enough about this sanitation cabinets, and I think it really could be the future of cold plunge products. When buying this product, RevX lets you choose between ozone and UV, and I have made separate videos on each of those. If I had to choose, I wish RevX would have made a cabinet that combined both ozone and UV. However, they don't, so you will have to choose between ozone and UV. So if you're asking me between ozone and UV, they both have their positives and negatives. I'd personally say that the safer bet between the two, the more conservative choice, would be UV, as UV is constantly running 24/7, 365, and doesn't actually add anything to your water, it just sterilizes it. Ozone, on the other hand, is a gas, so if you opt for ozone, you want to make sure that your tub is going to be outside, and you only want to be running that ozone for about an hour a day. Also, some people complain that ozone agitates their lungs, so one more thing to be cognizant about. With that being said, almost all the major cold plunge brands are using ozone, so certainly a great solution, and you really can't go wrong whichever you decide to choose. Once again, I do have videos on both ozone and UV with this system, so be sure to check them out if you want to hear more details about them. Finally, the absolute best part about RevX is the price. You really aren't going to find anything even close to comparable on the market from what you'll be getting with this company. It's just such a phenomenal value for a 1.5 horsepower chiller, a tub, even though it is inflatable, and the Sanitation, all for under $2,500, is just such a no-brainer. There's just nothing else on the market that even comes close to competing at this price point. It's just so hard for me to recommend anything else even close to competing with this product. And of course, I absolutely love the fact that it is as modular as it is, because there really is no perfect ice bath. There is no set it and forget it solution. Whichever ice bath you choose to go with, you're always gonna have to be maintaining it and upkeeping it. So just having such good access with the Sanitation cabinet, it's just gonna make your life a whole lot easier. What they've done with these Sanitation cabinets and their design makes the system so easy to troubleshoot and maintain. I promise you, if you get this ice bath, it is going to be something that you're going to have for a very, very long time. From everything I'm seeing, RevX is going to be a really big player in the consumer cold plunge market going forward. And with their prices and what they're offering, they're really gonna be tough to beat. So, like I said, cannot recommend it enough. All right, time to get in. Thank you so much for checking out the video. If you are interested in this unit, I've made a couple more videos talking about the Ozone specifically and the UV Sanitation cabinet, so be sure to check those videos out. And if you want to see more, be sure to check out our website at plungereviews.com. And we also have the funniest cold plunge memes on the internet on Instagram at cold plunge memes.